Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to City Skylines 2, and welcome back to Columbia County. I hope you're having a good one. I am so excited to be back. It feels like it's been forever. It's been 2 days since the last episode. At least if you're watching this as it goes out, and you've been watching the series so far as it goes out, it's been 2 days since that last episode. Now, I did talk about the reason for that at the end of the last one, but in case you have forgotten, or in case you didn't watch until the end of the last episode, I am aiming for episodes of this series to go out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next few weeks, because at the end of the month, October 2024, I'm going on vacation for about 11 days. So there will be some pre-recorded episodes in there, but that is something we can discuss when we get around to it. I will mention at the start of the first pre-recorded episode that it is pre-recorded. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, there have been a couple of small changes between this episode and the last, so let's talk about those and then talk about what I want to do today. So first things first, we have over $1 million, which is nothing to sniff at. Very, very happy about that. I'm going to be spending most of that today, but that's a good place to be for the start of the episode. Second things second, I have adjusted the bus lines a little bit, and I did this based on some feedback in the comments on the last episode. Now, first up, we have some new line colors. We went RGB because of course we did. The red line is still doing what it did before. It's going from left to right across that bottom road, stopping in with the industry. The green line is now going up into Meadowbrook and then back down across the city through kind of the middle, over by the medical center, over into our industrial space. And then the new blue line is going out of this little station. It loops around. It stops up by this custom park. It stops down here near this little decorated square roundabout thing that we built in the last episode. And then it stops in behind the good old welfare office that we built in the last episode. And I thought this was a really cool idea. I mean, I probably was going to put some transit out here regardless, but there were a couple of people that mentioned that just by its very nature, the welfare office might realistically attract people that maybe don't have their own car, that maybe can't afford to drive themselves out here. So a public transit connection to the welfare office makes sense. And so we have a little line that goes up and down the city, getting you to and from the welfare office from this station, which itself has lines that connect to the rest of the city. So you can hop on a bus and get to the welfare office if that's where you need to go. And again, that little narrative was based on a comment on the last episode. So thank you very much for whoever it was that suggested we do that. Now, another little thing that I've been experimenting with is the road builder mod, which I have switched back on because it's working totally fine. I think whatever issues I was having with, well, we're not actually with it specifically, and we're with something else, but regardless, it is back. And I've been thinking about how I can maybe use it to replace the parking that I've been building behind a lot of these buildings. Now, in saying that, I really like these little parking lots that I've been putting together. I mean, these aren't necessarily custom parking lots, but I really like this idea of having a bunch of parking spaces behind all of the buildings. I think it's kind of neat. Now, in saying that, roadside parking isn't something I'm necessarily interested in totally getting rid of, but I want to give my Sims some options. And so I got thinking that I could use Road Builder to build some parking into these alleyways, which means we're going to be losing a lane and replacing it with some parking spaces. So what I'm going to do is take out these parking lots that I've built in here already. And I'm going to take out these buildings that were a bit smaller, or their footprint was a bit smaller because of the parking. And I'm going to keep the game paused while I do this because I don't want things rebuilding. And I'm also going to take out this road. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to go into my zoning toolkit and turn off zoning. And I'm going to get this road right here, which is a one-way alley with parking. It is 8 meters across, which is about 1 U, which is the same as the standard alleyway. We'll turn off our guidelines. We want to go from here to right about there. And this is the road. It's a little road with some parking built right into it, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And then what I can do is just fill out these spaces. And then we get the larger row houses. We get the larger footprints or the larger yards, which I think is great, while still having some parking in here that people can use. And what's especially cool about it is that it's actually super realistic. Not one of my Sims has managed to park properly. Well, this guy has, but barely any of my Sims have managed to park properly between the lines. This guy somehow did, but a majority of them don't. So it's pretty realistic for a little bit of alleyway parking, but it does fill out. It does give us some more options, and I think that's kind of cool. So that's something I might do a little bit more of. I'm not against the idea of swapping out a bunch of my alleyways for this variant of the alleyways. Let me know what you think in the comments below about doing this for more of the alleys, and we'll see about doing that in the next episode or one of the next episodes. And while we're on the topic of the alleyways, another suggestion that I saw in the comments was to go through and start turning off all of the crossings for the alleyways, because most of them are relatively close to a main intersection. So doing this will give us a little bit more traffic flow. I would assume they're not necessarily going to be stopping for people crossing the roads. So I'm kind of okay with doing it, especially in places like this where they can kind of just walk down the street and cross down there. So we'll go around. I think this one could probably stay, but there's not that much foot traffic around here. We'll just take these out and see if it improves things. It might just be a little bit of future proofing that we're doing here, given that there's really not that much traffic at the moment, but I'm okay with this. I thought it was a pretty solid idea, and I think it does tidy things up a little bit. So we'll just go around pretty much the entire city and turn them off wherever they need to be turned off, which I think is largely going to be, like I said, in spaces where there are crossings pretty close by. So like here, for example, there's a crossing right here, so these can kind of go away. And then down this way, it's a little bit further from some crossings, so I think this can stay. This one as well, honestly, we have some pedestrian paths across the street, so we'll turn that one off, keep that one on. In here, similar story, we have crossings right up this way. This one as well, I think, can stay because there's nothing nearby. And this one, honestly, it can go as well. We have crossings all over the place down this way. All right, so with all of that out of the way, I want to take a look at this garbage problem that we're having in a few spots around the city. Now, this is probably tied into the fact that this place is very nearly full. It's processing about as much as it possibly can. And I mean, we could give them more trucks. We could give them a waste collection point, which allows garbage to be processed at a higher speed, which I'm not against doing. It really might not be a bad idea, but I also don't necessarily want to keep all of this down here. This landfill's kind of temporary until we have enough money to get a bunch more tiles, which, in saying that, we have enough to get one more tile. So I want to grab this tile right here, and I want to start moving across the river and moving my industry across the river as well, because I have seen a bunch of comments talking about the fact that I keep saying I want to build some proper stuff in here, but I'm going to struggle to do that because there's going to be ground pollution in here for quite a while after all this industry goes away, which is true. So what I think I'm going to do is come into this space and start laying out some roads and then just moving as quickly as I can within reason a bunch of industry into this space. So I want to get a nice strong brush. I want to get a slightly smaller brush. And I'm going to flatten a little bit of this out. Now, I don't want to go too crazy with terraforming here. I don't want to ruin sort of the vibe that's going on. I do want to keep this bit of water, but I want to flatten a good chunk of this out. I might even go and grab, let's see, U124, 123. So we'll grab this and we'll just bring everything up to about that height. This whole thing, as much as possible, I want to flatten out without totally changing the shape of the terrain. So all of this will come around here nice and carefully. Again, really don't want to mess too much with the layout of the river and the land and stuff like that. But I do want a nice flat space to work with. And there is method to my madness. We are going to be putting a slightly larger building out here. So we'll go for something like this for the time being. That's probably about as much space as I'm going to need. I think I will come down here just because I'm probably going to bring some roads out that way. And I think we'll maybe go something like that. and like that, just filling in this little spot in the middle. So that gives us a really, really flat space to play with. Now, what I would like to do is come through here, and I want to get myself a little something is what I want to get right here. I know that's not super descriptive, but that's what I want. Now, what I'll do is bring myself a road down like this. And I think that's pretty solid. I'm going to turn on my guidelines, and I'm going to give myself a little road that comes down like this. I'm also going to turn my grids back on, my zoning back on, so I can really see what I'm doing. And I want to see, do we have a midpoint here? We absolutely do. So we'll turn off our zoning right now. Zoning, sorry, the snapping. We can do 48 meters, get a nice little curve going around there, and then turn off the zoning on those roads. And then what I can do is I can go in here, I can turn off my turn off my toolkit again, and I can just add a little bit of a key wall to a bunch of these roads. Now I want that to be right there. Just going the entire way around this thing. Let's make sure it's on the right side, which is really what it needs to be. So right there, and there. I can push the land back a little bit, so we have the water going right up against those roads. But for now, what I'd like to do is go back in here, and I'm going to try and just outline a whole bunch of this terrain. This is a relatively straight shot across here. So we're going to do something kind of like this, I think is what I'm looking for. And then this is relatively straight as well. So we're going to go something a little bit like, say this. And then this is relatively straight as well. I'm not really too worried about this being perfect. I really kind of don't need it to be, because it probably shouldn't be, right? It's not gonna be. We're not gonna have, we're gonna have key walls the entire way around this, but we're not gonna have the water going up to all of these roads. So let's do a little cut right here, and let's start curving these around, connecting them together, getting them to look that little bit better. So you are going to come down like this. You are going to need a little cut in there as well. So we'll do maybe a node right there and a node right there. Can I take those parts out? I absolutely can. So similar story. We're going to come down. We're going to curve you to about, let's see, turn off my guidelines. Right about there. Should be totally fine. And then down here, exactly the same thing. Turn on the guidelines, come right out, and just curve this around. It's a little sharp looking. I don't know that I love that. And I think I can make that look better. Okay, so I can't tell if I like this, but this is what I'm doing for now. Basically, I've changed out this entire road for what is essentially a highway, so it's a little regional road. We've got some asymmetry going on here as well, which I think is important. And it's going to let us sort of run this straight through and out to this other regional road at some point, but that point is not going to be today. Now I could, if I wanted to, start putting some little off-ramps here to kind of, you know, let people kind of swoop down and around this road if I really wanted to. I don't really want to do that right now though, so I'm not going to. And honestly, my priority for this entire space is really just one thing. There's really only one thing I'm concerned about with this, and that is going to be garbage and how this place handles garbage. So let's just get a little bit cheeky and bring this connection straight across here so that we have water and sewage being dealt with. And then in terms of power lines and power connections, I honestly think the best thing I could do is kind of just run a power line from here to there. I think it's a little bit cheaty, a little bit lazy, but it's probably for the best. It's really not what I'm looking for there. That is really not what I'm looking for. Let me just try and redo that in a way that's going to be a little bit more visually satisfying and appealing. I think that's going to be the plan. Also, apparently these guys are not connected to anything, so let's just take you out as well, I suppose. We'll go back in. We'll go from here to there. It is now connected. We'll go back into power, and we want to go way down with this, I guess. So way down to there, and we'll go across to there. And that seems to have done what I wanted it to do. So that'll give that space power, water, and sewage coverage. And then what I want to do really is I want to go in here. I want to get a recycling center, and I'm just thinking I might just put it there. I think that's kind of a good spot for it. We're a little bit further away, could be an option as well. I'm not against the idea of putting it over on the other side there so that traffic kind of just goes down to it and then loops around and does its thing. That really might not be the worst thing in the world, but I kind of like the idea of it being a little bit central. I think that's kind of cool. My only concern is that this thing does have upgrades, and we might want to... If I put it out here, I've got room for those upgrades. If I put it in here and start zoning some industry, I don't necessarily have room for those upgrades. Unless I redevelop the area later on, which is certainly an option. Down here is also a pretty cool space for it. In fact, can I get that? Ooh, would down here be the better spot? Sort of right across. No, you know what? It's right across from the welfare center. I actually don't want to. I hadn't thought about that. Oh, I was going to do a little beautiful boardwalk thing down here. And now they're going to be looking over at some nasty old industry. Oh, well, too late to go back now. We're going to build that right there. And this thing is needed, to be fair. We really do actually need this thing. So it's going to have to exist. And then what I'm going to do while I wait for that to start working and doing its thing is I'm going to go in here and start taking out some of these trees, because I don't want trees in here, because this is all going to be water. So these can all go away, and then we'll go in, we'll grab, let's see, this height of terrain, and we're just going to flatten this whole thing out so that we have the water going right up against those roads. So it just looks that little bit more interesting, a little bit something like that. We'll grab a smoothing brush and just sort of hit some of these edges a little bit, bringing them down, making it look a little bit better. And then through there, not too sure about what I've got going on, but we'll do something like this as well and see how that goes. And honestly, I kind of like that. I do. I also love seeing all these trucks heading out, which is absolutely fantastic news. So that should put us in a good spot. I'm also noticing that my zoning seems to have messed up over here again. So let me just have you go into there, and then have you go into there. We'll remove U-turns and unsafe. We'll do the same thing down here. No U-turns, no unsafe. And I think this one's done already as well, which is great. So all that traffic is getting up on the little regional road, which is great. It's all going to filter through and hopefully deal with some things. We don't have enough water, which is deeply concerning. That's actually, yeah, really, really deeply concerning. So I think what I'll do, just as a temporary thing, actually we can afford a larger water tower. What if I was to just replace this one? What if we just, I mean, I know I just built this thing, but what if we just didn't? What if we just got rid of it and said, we'll just put the better water tower in there? That might be the play right here. So it can just live, I want to say, in here like that. And I think that's fine. I don't know if it's connected to anything. I don't know if it's actually, I don't think it is connected to anything. So we'll go in, we'll take out this, this pipe, and we'll just go from there to there. And I think that's good. I think that's totally fine. The only thing I'd like to do is maybe go in and get rid of a couple of these little plants down here, use move it, and then spin this thing around so it's in a bit of a better spot, assuming it's going to let me do that, which it now is. So basically, put it right there, and then just sort of straighten it up and shuffle it over. I think that's going to be the spot for it. Maybe just sort of a little bit more central. I can move these plants around, make it look a bit better. And that seems fine. I'm okay with this. That should deal with my problems. So we'll just grab, what is this? A wild green bush. We'll put it there. We'll go there and there. Give ourselves another little bush right there. A little apple tree or two. These will grow as well, which is fine. So we'll do that. And that should solve the water problems. It absolutely does. Okay, so I think when it comes to the rest of this space, I'm going to keep it relatively simple. I'm just going to go in here and start adding some little alleyways around the recycling center. And we'll go a little something like this. We'll bring these straight through as well. Now, admittedly, I don't think the zoning is going to play all that nicely, which is kind of a pain. I really wish it would. It would be so much better if I could get some perfect zoning in here, but just a little something like this is probably fine. We could do, I don't know, if I turn on my different snapping options, can I get anything in here that's going to look halfway decent? I don't know that I'm going to get anything that I really want to work with here. I could do this, I suppose, and then have you sort of run straight through like this and take out that little extra part. I guess that looks fine. So it's a way in there. And I mean, as for the rest of it, you could go straight through. There is a bit of a wall right there, so we're not going to be going too crazy with this, but we could go to about there, and that'll give us a little something we can build in and zone in. I suppose I could probably add a node up here somewhere as well and kind of bring this down through here, but this is probably enough for now. So this will do the job. I'm also thinking I might actually go in and add some key walls to the insides of this so that we actually kind of surround the recycling center with a bit of a fence without having to do any crazy amounts of detailing myself. I think that just helps enclose it a little bit, and I'm sort of okay with that. So that's gonna be my plan for the recycling center. And then for the rest of this, I kind of just think we're going to do some industry. I think we're just going to go a little bit generic with our zoning. So we'll do a little factory right there. We can do a little 4x4 right there. We can fill out this space. We can fill out sort of that space as well. And then down here, we can fill this in with something like that, something like this. And I think that's all right. I can fill in all of the empty spaces as well. Right in here, I'm not really too sure what we want to do with it, so we'll go for this just to fill out the space. In here, we'll go for this and this to fill out the space. We don't actually have all that much demand for industry left, but that's kind of okay. We'll just fill in as much of this as I reasonably can, and then hope for the best on the rest of it. Now, let's just turn off zoning on this road, because that does tidy up the industry on this road, which is good. We could probably do something in here as well, just to kind of tidy this up a little bit, but I think we should be all right. Let's do like a nice big factory right there, maybe a little bit smaller. We'll do a factory right here. We'll do a little something here. And that should be about enough. I can play around with surfaces to kind of tie all of this together and make it feel a little bit more, I don't know. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I, for some reason, want to say homogeneous, but I don't think that's, I don't know if that applies to City Skylines and like a nasty old industrial space. I really don't know. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. Okay, so slight change of plan, which can be dangerous in its own right, but I've changed some of the roads in here just to make a little bit more sense and so that I can play around with them that little bit more. I did, however, happen to miss this little part, which needs to look like this now. I'm not really too worried about multiple lanes going down this way. I don't really think that's going to be necessary, but this just gives me a bit more of a grid to build within, and I think it's going to make my life that little bit easier. But what I would like to do first, before I start placing anything, is I'd like to go in here and just start placing some parking lots. I don't think we necessarily urgently need a bunch of parking lots in here, but I think it's going to help fill out the space. There is obviously going to be demand for parking out here, so I think it's probably fair enough that we do this. And it's just going to make it a little bit easier for me because it's something that, like I said, is kind of going to fill the space. Now, I didn't realize that a large parking lot would fit in here perfectly, but suddenly I'm very, very tempted to just place a large parking lot right there. I'm gonna not do that because I just don't think it's necessary, but it's ever so slightly tempting. Definitely tempting. Let's do some tiny parking lots. We'll do one here. We'll go for, I want to say here, because I think that could be kind of neat. We could do a little tiny parking lot down here if I really wanted to. I might go for that corner. I might go for a small parking lot on that corner just to kind of fill in the space with a little something as well. Down this way, I'm not too worried. And then over this way, maybe a long parking lot right here just to kind of fill in the space behind some other industrial buildings. Down this way, maybe a tiny little parking lot right there would be something kind of useful. And I think that's about all I'm really concerned with. Now, in doing this and in bulldozing all of the industry that was here, I've kind of messed up my industrial demand, but I'm kind of hoping that it's all going to come back relatively quickly, which it looks like it is, which is fantastic news. And then in here, I want to do this And I want to try and do this as well, which fills in the space beautifully. I'll go for some slightly smaller buildings in here and something even smaller right there. And then in this way, let's go for, I don't know, something like that should be totally fine. We'll do something kind of this size. We'll do something kind of that size. And then in here, kind of similar story. I'm just going to try and fill this out as best I possibly can, which seems to be going pretty well. So fill in that bit, fill in that bit. And it is giving me a really good amount of industry, which is fantastic. It's all building in really, really quickly, which is beautiful. Down this way, we'll just do this and get that built across. And then these guys, I'm going to just get rid of and go slightly larger, I think, just to sort of fill the space. So this guy can stay that size. These guys can go maybe this size. And then the ones in the middle can be like that. And that should be all right. This part down here is probably going to be more parking. I'll probably do something kind of custom with it. Maybe do some details around the curvy part of the road. But I kind of like this. Obviously, it's a bunch of generic industrial zoning, but I kind of like this layout a little bit better. And I think it's going to play nicely once I go to start trying, at least, to detail this space. So, I mean, on that note, we'll take out all of the trees that I'm not going to be keeping within these roads. I will probably put some trees back in here, but just as an initial first pass, I like this more than what we had before. Oh, you know what I've just realized I could do? I can get rid of this guy, and I can go in here and build myself a little alleyway. So if I build it, say, right about here, we'll just go ahead and bring it out to that spot. I would like to do another one right about, say, there is kind of what I'm thinking. I think I could get away with this. I want to bring this guy in, over, and over to there. Basically, I might be able to just use Road Builder to give myself a little parking lot alleyway road thing here. So we don't necessarily need these shoulders. What we do need is some parking. So parking there and parking there on either side of it. We want to do perpendicular is what I'm actually, no, probably not perpendicular, probably the 60-degree one. We'll add markings. So it's going to look like this. And on the other side, same thing, 60 degrees and markings. And that's kind of okay. I'm kind of okay with that. In fact, perpendicular is probably exactly what I'm looking for. We want this to be a little parking lot. And I think that'll work. I think that'll be better. I don't know if I need the shoulders on either side once we have parking in there, which is already being used, which is kind of hilarious. Let me take those out. It doesn't seem like they're necessary. And can I make these lanes thinner? No, they are going to have to be 3 meters across, which is totally fine. I think that's what we do. I think that's how we go with this, is we have this be a little, I mean, it's not really an alleyway. It's I guess parking lots road is what we'll call it. Or parking lot alley, I guess is what we'll call it. And we'll bring the speed limit down to like 20 kilometers per hour, since it's like a little parking lot, maybe even 15. So it's like, hey, you are not speeding on this. And that seems good. I'm kind of okay with that. And then all we need to do is go through and grab the parking lot alley and do the same thing right here. And suddenly we have a way for people to park behind these buildings and kind of get around into the parking spaces, and that seems all right. Although it does look like there is some kind of weirdness going on here, which we might need to do something about, but I'm sort of okay with this. I might just need to sort of adjust where the roads are and how they work, but for the most part, I am very much okay with this. So let's do this, and let's do this, and then I'll try and just use a regular alleyway to sort of connect these guys together, which I can totally do. Could I go one better? Can I use maybe a complex curve here to connect these guys together? So we go up like that and then over. I absolutely could. I might just need to shuffle this guy back a little bit to make it look the part, but I can absolutely do that. So we'll go and do this, and we want to go, honestly, up to about there. Seems pretty good. I want to see if this will work. So complex curve, we want to go up like this and over like this. Does that look silly? That kind of does. It really does once with the surfaces the way they are. But I think if I was to go in there and I was to do some proper surface work, you know, with a little bit of, I want to say pavement is probably what I'm looking for. I really don't know. I really don't know what kind of surface we would put on this. Let's have a little bit of a look and see if this is the one we're looking for. Yeah, that's absolutely the one we're looking for. Okay. We can totally make this work. All right. So into the surface tool, let's grab you and bring it out to about here. In fact, this might be easier to do if I just start again, but you know what? We're going to stick with it. We're going to see what we can do here. Bring this down to about there, bring this straight through to there, and bring you straight down to about there. Does that look? That looks okay. There's a little bit of a seam right there, but I think we can make that work. Okay, so I don't know necessarily how long I spent putting this together. I don't know if there's just been a time lapse or a cut or what's going on with the state of the video at the moment, because I'm gonna be honest with you, about halfway through what we're looking at right here, I was thinking, man, I might need to stop this episode, stop this recording, take a lap and start again, because I really wasn't too sure I was gonna like the end result of what we have here. But I actually kind of really dig what we have going on here. Now, just to be clear, what we have going on here is still very much just an industrial district, but I filled in a bunch of the spaces with, admittedly, a bunch of trees, but also with a bunch of the industrial props that are available in Cities Skylines 2. So things like this, it's just a decoration, but it helps to fill out the space. Just extending some surfaces does the same thing. Going in here with some decals has done very much the same thing as well. We can go into this space, for example, and start putting down a little bit of dirt, a little bit of grime, just to sort of tie it all together and make it feel a little bit more used and a little bit more worn and a little bit more like there's something going on here. And I just really, really like that. I'm also really enjoying going around and adding a little bit of dirt and grime to some of these little entrances to the garage spaces on some of these buildings. I think it just helps to bring it together. And if I wanted to, I could sort of go in and maybe add some different cracks to these surfaces as well. So maybe just in front of here, we have a little bit of cracking going on. Maybe in here, there's a little bit of something similar going on. Maybe just, I don't know, a little bit of patched asphalt or something like that. It doesn't really matter. We could just do, I don't know, this. It just helps to bring it together, and that's what I've done all through this space. I've also added a bunch of these little dedicated parking lot roads. There's one in here. There's obviously the ones over there, and they are getting used. Admittedly, traffic's also having some trouble getting in here, but that's something we'll deal with a bit later on. In here, I've also added a bit of an invisible pedestrian path, which is kind of marked by the fact that there's a gap between all of the trees and things that are going on. So you can walk through here. And I like the space. I think it turned out pretty good. It's a nicely sort of detailed space. and I'm hoping we can do something on the other side of this at some point. But it hasn't really dealt with the bulk of the demand that we have right now. Although it did take long enough to build that we've almost got all the money back that I spent, well, placing the recycling center in the first place. The only problem is that the recycling center its efficiency could be better. It definitely could be better. It could also use some mail handling, apparently, which is interesting. We could give it a few more garbage trucks. I don't think we need that. We could increase the processing speed by building a hazardous waste collection point. I don't know that we need that either right now, although it could go on the other side of the water. And same with the storage extension. It could go on the other side of the water as well. I just don't think we need any of those right now, which is probably fair enough. So something I have noticed with this industrial space is that occasionally traffic starts to back up at this intersection coming into Blackwater. So I think unfortunately for this guy, we're going to be getting rid of that row house, and we're going to get a little bit of an asymmetrical road right about here. And that's hopefully going to be enough to do what I need it to do, which is essentially just give us a little bit more traffic control. This is slightly problematic. I'm not going to lie. That's not exactly ideal. We might need to use a little bit of move it to try and just sort of shuffle this along a little bit in one way or another. Just move this sort of back a little bit. Maybe just sort of move you back a little bit as well. See if we can't just sort of shuffle some of these nodes around, although they don't necessarily seem to want to behave. This one specifically, there's what I'm looking for. So let's just get you right against the footpath right there. And I'm hoping this is going to be good. I will say, I don't necessarily want to have this rightmost lane. I also don't want U-turns and unsafe. I don't want this lane going to the left. I think that's a little bit unnecessary. But that should be all right. Unless that should maybe be a dedicated... You know what? That is going to be a dedicated right-hand turn. You are going to go straight on. Yeah, that's how we're going to do that right there. And I'm hoping that's going to be good for us. I'm hoping that's going to help us just deal with traffic. I'm also noticing that this is that slightly off center? It is. Oh, I don't like that. I do not like that at all. Do I care enough to adjust it though, is the question. I feel like the answer is a resounding yes, I absolutely do. Now that right there looks a little bit more in line with what I'm looking for. I think that's about as good. Oh, hold on. Right about there. I think that's better. Yeah, I like that. I think that's kind of what we're looking for. All right, so with a roundabout added to the little regional road on this side of things, and with this asymmetrical road on this side of things, sort of controlling traffic that little bit better, and with all of the trees in here and all of the parking lots, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it there for today. Now, to be clear, we have a huge amount of demand for residential zoning. We could be making so much more money, and we have a huge amount of demand for commercial zoning as well. So what I'd like to do in the next one is come back towards the welfare office, which is something I wanted to do today. And I would like to start working on the little sort of boardwalk thing that I talked about, the little park in front of this. Now, admittedly, it is going to have a view over an industrial space, but I'm hoping I can put some offices in here. Maybe some higher density offices, which we don't have yet, but we're getting there. We did hit milestone 8, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that, but we do have 15 development points available, which is fantastic. My thinking is we can maybe hide the industry a little bit. I don't want skyscrapers over there, so it might not happen. We might not end up using offices to hide this. We might use some higher density commercial zoning, which we do have demand for in terms of commercial. Regardless, that's my plan. I want to start dealing with some of the demand that we have in the next episode. I want to start just getting a few more row houses in here and kind of filling in this whole, not all of the space necessarily. I do want to get some parks in there, some plazas, some detailing, of course. And I also want to deal with education, which is another thing people have been mentioning. There's a lot of things that I'm falling behind on a little bit because I'm spending a bit more time detailing than perhaps I need to right now. but I think this was a really fun project, and I'm really glad that I stuck with it and didn't just, you know, delete the recording halfway through. So we have some work still to do. The good news is we can start to move some of this industry out. Obviously, we might need to build a bit more of this industrial space over here before we do that, but that's kind of what the goal is going to be, to start moving this industry over here, turn this into maybe another neighborhood or commercial space or whatever it might be. Either way, that is for then. As for right now, that is going to be doing us for today. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. It has been an absolute pleasure as always. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.